was about this time last year, actually, September, that things went really well and I was in fantastic form. And I would say overall, over the last 12 months, it has gone very well. So, well, certainly the first 6 months of this year went very well, and I was in very good form and I was being very productive, and pushed myself a little bit, and I responded. I managed to get stuff done. I achieved a bit, and I felt I was back on target again. I was sharp. I was able to think properly, and my wit came back. It felt like everything was perfect. Now, nothing lasts forever, and these things tend to be cyclical. And it's interesting that I mentioned September earlier, because I have had that cyclical problem that this time every year I start to go down. And that is incredibly frustrating. I mean, this is something I've had since I was a child. I'm sure some people out there can relate. This issue that when I was a child, going back to school, I was filled with that sense of dread all of the time, which I was thinking about recently, which is a little bit strange, because it wasn't that I necessarily didn't like school, but I suppose I didn't like the lack of freedom of school. And it was the thought of school more than anything else, of returning back to that rigidity and that sort of prison structure. I mean, really looking back on it now, it was a prison, kind of a benign prison, but it is a prison. You're told to be within this building for 6 hours a day. You have no option. And I think that grated with me from a very early stage. Now, I was good at school and I enjoyed a lot of subjects and all this kind of thing. So the actual process of learning, and I've always been really interested and passionate about learning. Even to this day, I love learning new things, and I'm part of teaching now at this stage, and I love giving that back and imparting that back. But there was something, well, what it came down to was that the start of September every year was a sense of dread for me, because so many things were kind of coinciding. It was the end of the summer, the end of that beautiful warmth, and not necessarily the beautiful warmth, but the thought of it. A lot of it is really in my head, and that's where everything is, really. Ultimately, that's how you form your experience. And partly that's the battle that I'm coming up against here now, is the life I'm living in my head versus the life I'm living outside. But it became a self-fulfilling prophecy that at the end of every summer, towards the end of August and start of September, I would be filled with dread, and that lack of my hope would drift away, and I would get very depressed at the thought of just going back to that drudgery and that awful kind of prison of institution, really, which went to primary school, secondary school, and I suppose even college. Even though I had great friends, I was very lucky to meet great friends all the way through, and that would have been part of it, but that seems to have been imprinted on me. And as a result, ever since September, even now that I'm much older and working, September has that cyclical imprint that is frustrating me. But as I just said earlier, last September went very well for me. It was probably the first year that I beat back that cyclical tendency to let things drop, which is frustrating. And part of the reason I'm talking here now to the camera is to try and beat it out and trash this out from myself as to what the hell is happening to me. And I've talked about it so many times in grey rooms with counsellors, sitting one opposite one, trying to trash out what the hell is going on in my head, and what am I feeling, and what are my thoughts. But ironically, I find it much more therapeutic just talking to myself into the camera. And even now already I can feel a sense of power coming back, because I'm rationalizing it from myself. And it's not necessarily rationalizing it, because it's about trying to understand my own feelings, really, just listen to them in some ways. That sounds very esoteric, but I think that is what's happening. Because quite often I find myself just going down, and drudging into the mud, and without ever really noticing or being able to pull myself back or shout stop. So what am I feeling? That's the interesting question. How can I open up my own head and look under the bonnet and see what's inside? Well, the first thing is utter exhaustion. And that is my number one enemy, and always has. And that's what's hit me hugely. Now, I increased my medication about a week ago, and that seems to be the cause of it. So that, ever since, I have been absolutely exhausted. And that is my number one enemy in life, because exhaustion thieves me of everything. Thieves me of happiness, the ability to be able to think through the fog. I mean, at the moment, I've been trying to, my productivity has grown to a halt. Now, it is the weekend, and that's another thing that I've been kind of debating myself. All the way through life, I've kind of treated every day as a day to get some sort of productivity done. So I whether it's, I remember reading something that there's no such, I think it was Richard Branson said, there's no such thing as work and play, it's all just living. And that, I agree with that, that's partly it. And I think for a well-balanced life, getting a small bit of productivity done where I'm trying to realise my dreams or push myself forward a little bit, doing a little bit of that every day, and a little bit of socialising, a little bit of exercise, and all that kind of thing provides for the optimum day. So even on weekends, I'm trying to get a little bit done, and it takes the pressure off for the week. And really, it's for myself anyway. So that's normally the way I work. Now, I do have a tendency to push myself too hard and push myself too far. And no, I don't know what that is like relative to other people, but I have had that kind of feeling all the way through my life. Particularly in later years, I feel a sense of urgency, and I feel like I'm in a rush. I don't know, I was trying to think, and maybe it's because my parents died before they retired. That's kind of a factor. I was trying to think, maybe that's a reason. You know, my mother used to always talk about plans she'd have when she'd retire and all this kind of thing, and that really kind of burned into me, the fact that life is short and sometimes it will never happen unless you do it now. So that kind of drives me a little bit in the background. But at the moment, productivity is really going to a halt. It's very difficult for me to focus, very difficult for me to stay awake. The exhaustion is so intense that I know it's Saturday morning, but it was very difficult to drag myself out of bed. I'm trying to avoid oversleeping, because that is a big enemy for me. And so, but it was horrific trying to get up. And that's because of just, my mind is in fog and it's switched off. It's just does not want to start. And I always have that problem to an extent, but more severe now this morning. And then even throughout the day, I am barely able to function. I'm just, mental exhaustion I've never really understood that term, but that's probably what it is, because, and this is a battle I've had over the years, mental versus physical exhaustion. And because I have that mental exhaustion, I've tried to push myself physically. I've done marathons and triathlons and stuff like that. And the feeling I get from the exercise is fantastic. And I feel energized after it. It's weird, it's so ironic. Whereas I could end up doing nothing all day and I feel utterly exhausted. It's a real paradox in life, something that I'm only kind of discovering recently. It's kind of like going into cold water and enjoying it much more than warm water. But yeah, so how am I feeling at the moment? So utter exhaustion is the big thing. Probably because of the increase in medication. But this is one so frustrating, because I had been on this exact dose before and it worked well for me. So it's really frustrating that it's backfiring now. Not only is it not helping me, it's pushing me back big time. And it's pushing me back in a kind of a scary way. And I think sometimes if you do something or take something in order to improve yourself, and when that doesn't work, or worse, push you backwards, that can really strip you of hope. And I feel sorry for people out there who are going through much worse, specifically with SSRIs, because they can do that so often. But this one is really playing tricks on me, because I had got to a stage where I felt really comfortable with this, and I thought, this is something I can go to if things go bad, and it'll sort things out. Because I suppose I felt it's kind of a mathematical thing. It's kind of an input outputs, and that there wouldn't be any hysteresis or memory on it. There would just be, you put in these chemical inputs and you should get the certain chemical output, which is predictable. I'm learning now that does not seem to be the case. Now, the brain is a fairly complicated organism, but I'm finding it's not responding the same way. And again, people say, oh, it takes 4 to 6 weeks and all that kind of stuff, but that was never the case for me in the past. Now, maybe that's what it will take for me this time, and it's a matter of being patient. But God, trying to wait out that intensity when it's like that level of utter exhaustion for 4 to 6 weeks is very difficult to put up with. So in my head, I'm thinking that I have a number of options. I can scale it back again. If that stripped away the exhaustion, then maybe I'd have some hope of trying to get my way out of this, and maybe, I don't know, increase it again later, I don't know. But that's something I'll have to work out. And then there is my old buddies, which is worries flooding in. So irrational, or some rational, but lots of irrational worries, which are causing a lot of stress. And I find it's kind of exponential. If I have 1 or 2 worries, it's fine. I get a certain amount of stress. Once it goes above 3, 4, 5, 6, then it's an exponential increase in stress. And I hit a fucking limit there. So once it goes above 3 or 4 or 5, 6 things to worry about, then that's mayhem. That's when I start short circuiting and I close down. And I wake up in the morning going, I can't cope with this. So, and change, which I have always had a problem with when change comes in. That is a big issue for me. It's something I'll have to kind of learn about to adjust to. I mean, when I think of most of the changes that have happened to me in life, they've been fantastic. They've been very good, but I still fear it. And it's a natural instinct, but that is part of the problem, I've no doubt. I'm already starting to feel a bit lighter now, just rationalising this. I spent so many hours in dark rooms with counsellors trying to trash things out, and really went around in circles and achieved very little from most of them. And ironically, just talking to myself in front of a camera, and particularly the camera, I think helps in huge amount, because it forces me to be in the moment. I'm actually 100% mindful at the moment. I've just realised that I'm not able to think about my own issues, ironically, even though I'm talking about them. And it is brilliant. I feel myself feeling much better already. Maybe this is the solution. It's talk therapy with you, whoever you are, if anybody. But yeah, counselling certainly helped, but it was never a panacea for me. But having to think about it in the moment. Right now I can see on the camera the seconds counting down, and it gives a sense of immediacy for me to thrash this out, and I'm under my own microscope. And interestingly, just examining my condition changes it. And it's just one of the fundamental principles in life, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Like, if you measure something, even on the microscopic level of subatomic level, if you measure it, you have to bounce a photon of light on it, and that changes its position. So you can never find out where it was originally before you measured it. So measuring something changes it, and that's the same from the microscopic level all the way up to the macro level, which we're at now. Just me trying to analyze it, it's changed, and it has changed already. I'm looking at the clock and it's 16 minutes through, and I feel better probably than I have been in most therapy sessions, which have lasted hours, or at least 1 hour at a time. And maybe it just makes sense to be your own therapist. It's good because it's probably on my own terms. Now, I am doing CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, as well at the same time, which I don't know whether that's helping, but it's any different perspective and angles that I can get, you know, I'll go for it, you know, just to investigate it and probe at it, find out what the hell's going on. Energy, I'm starting to feel the energy coming back in me. It's a beautiful day outside, it's a bit sunny, and I'm starting to feel the energy come back. Maybe it's because my head feels a bit lighter now, having talked about it. And yeah, I like this feeling. I'm actually starting to feel a sense of calm and lightness that I haven't felt now in about a week or two, which is beautiful. It's lovely. And it's lovely to feel that I've actually done it myself by just poking around for 20 minutes under this sort of self-microscope kind of conditions, poking around and trying to prod myself and tease it out. The ball of wool is unwinding. And that's kind of a nice feeling. It's satisfying that I can do that for myself. And maybe this is the answer. This time last year, I made a lot of series of videos of mental health and what was going on in my head, and then I kind of stopped. But it was interesting, actually. Now that I think about it, I made a series of them, about 10 of them, and it took a long time to edit and to upload. And when I was editing them, finishing editing and putting them up, I had this strange feeling of, what the hell am I talking about here? Because I didn't have those problems anymore. And that was really weird. And again, it was the very process of talking them through that seemed to just expunge them. So by the time I had edited them, I felt like a fraud. I actually felt like a fraud uploading, because I thought, I'm not depressed. Why the hell am I talking about depression? It's weird because, and I think it tends to go with the condition as well sometimes, because it's such an ethereal condition, because you can't do a blood test for it. It's you can't even do a brain scan for it. I mean, they've found now that there isn't really any chemical imbalance. The chemical imbalance theory is kind of rubbish, been disproved. There's really very little evidence for it. I mean, so there can be times where you kind of wonder, what the hell is this? And I'm beginning to feel that now. Feels actually quite good. My God, maybe this is it. I mean, if you are feeling things are tough, maybe you should just sit down in front of a camera and talk it out to yourself and just see where it goes. I mean, I had no idea where this was going to go. I just thought, God, I am feeling so... I was in a sense of despair, because today I managed to get out for a walk. Normally, I'm quite active. I go out and I go for a swim, and I'll do a fair bit of walking the dog or something. I'm reasonably active, and I do an exercise routine every morning, and I try and get moving and stuff like that. Today I went for a walk, and I came back, and I was so exhausted that I fell asleep on the couch. And when that happens to me, when I sleep during the day, it makes me feel utterly desperate, because I just think I've given up. I've given into the exhaustion, and I'm just feeding it, because you never wake up feeling satiated. You wake up feeling more exhausted, probably more groggy, more horrible when you lie on the couch. Lying on a couch and going to sleep on a couch never solves anything. And it tends to make things worse. So Yeah, and that so I just felt such desperation. I saw the tripod and I said, I'm going to talk this through. I'm going to stop this. I'm not going to let this go on any longer. And I feel that sense of resolve now. I'm going to battle through this. I'm going to fucking punch through this. Because I'm not going to let this drag me down again. Because this is probably on week 2 now. And it thieves so much happiness from me. It fills my mind with such bullshit worries. It thieves my thoughts and hopes and dreams. You know, and I'm not going to let it. You know, it stops here. Because now that I've thrashed this out, I've exposed it in front of me. It's bollock naked in front of me now. And it looks absolutely ludicrous. And I'm really glad that I've done this. Because it really has worked. 20 minutes of self-therapy has pulled me from the depths of despair to feeling like I've that fight back in me. And in fairness, I've always had that sense of fight in me. And it's just a matter of trying to dig deep to get that, find it. And to dip into that well, because it is there, and just to fight back, not punch back, never give in. I feel great now. I feel absolutely great. I'm going to go out for a walk with the dog in the sun. And then I'm going to come back and get some productivity done. Productivity done. It sounds like some Chinese factory where I'm stamping out little widgets. Creativity and just, it's all about just pursuing dreams and trying to have an imprint on the world, and even just through these videos, this channel, to allow out my thoughts and creativity. And that is a hugely rewarding process, and it's rewarding in and of itself, regardless of the metrics and views or whatever, or lack of them. This in itself, just doing this, is very therapeutic and very beneficial to me. And yeah, I've proven here today that it's worked quite well. If you're feeling low, my heart goes out to you. Try this. Try 20 minutes of talking into a camera and see how you feel, and let me know how it turns out. See you soon.